Before I begin my story, I want to thank Pope Francis. I want to express my gratitude for recognizing the work of religious women throughout the world, I should say religious sisters throughout the world, in extending God's mercy. Today is also the first day of National Catholic Sisters Week in the United States. So, I am honored to be able to tell my story on this International Women's Day, united with the women of the world with voices of faith. For the past 26 years, Siena House Shelter for Young Moms and Their Babies has been and continues to be a journey of faith. By that, I mean a journey of listening to the voice of God within and around us every moment. Actually, my journey began when I entered the Sisters of St. Dominic of Blauvelt, New York, 18 years ago. Not 18 years ago, excuse me. When I was 18. Which was not 18 years ago. As a Dominican sister, I taught in Catholic elementary and secondary schools for another 18 years. I did vocation work for our congregation for 3 years. During that time, speaking about religious life to young women who would be considering such, it brought me inward to truly examine my own life in terms of my service and my ministry. I decided to do a 30-day retreat. 30 days of silence for me was a blessing, believe it. To listen, to truly listen to where God was leading me. I prayed for the grace to let go and to follow God's design for me. That's a little scary. It was a surrender prayer at the end of my retreat that brought me to the conclusion that I needed to work with the poor. I needed to leave the classroom the way I knew it. Scary. Shortly after my retreat, I met two of our sisters who worked in the Highbridge section of the Bronx, which is absolutely one of the poorest congressional districts in the United States. What a surprise. I started to notice the dropouts on the street, hanging out on the corners, and I started an adult education program in the neighborhood for those young people. Most of them were feeling abandoned and had no place to feel safe, with little or no support. However, there is one story that changed the course of my life. One of my students in my adult ed class, a young woman, age 21, came to me weeping, sobbing, that her 5-month-old baby girl had been sexually abused by her sister's boyfriend with whom she was living. I needed to do something. God's voice became louder. Then our sisters had their general chapter of affairs in 1987 to address the issues of the day. To my amazement, at the end of the chapter, our community made a commitment to the poor, to work with the homeless, not primarily, but to focus on the homeless. Group of us, following the chapter, decided to work together to figure out what we would do for the homeless. We began to look for a house because that's what I wanted. I wanted a safe space for some of my students We identified an empty convent in that neighborhood that Mother Teresa's missionaries of charity, the priests' missionaries of charity, were living in. Then I found out they were moving out, and we identified that building. However, we weren't sure of the way that we were going to make that happen. We had a few things to deal with. We were on our way, but not sure of where we were going. Then I was invited to the synod in the New York City Archdiocese of New York in 1988. I had an opportunity to speak at a mic on behalf of poor pregnant women. Cardinal O'Connor heard my voice. The building was made available to us, the empty convent building. The city accepted our proposal for funding, and Siena House opened its doors to 27 homeless mothers and babies on January 23rd, 1990. Since then, we have assisted over 2,000 women and women to move beyond the situation of homeless and poverty to one of independence and self-worth. Our house was named Siena House after St. Catherine of Siena, who worked with destitute women of the 14th century. A quote from her dialogue: "Let me borrow the fire of your spirit and share with all your mercy and burning love." There are so many stories of our women, the women who have passed through our doors. But there is one story I'd like to share with you. It's the story of Michelle, a 22-year-old young woman who suffered in her 6th month of pregnancy of preeclampsia. Now, for those of you who don't know what that is, it's a buildup of fluid throughout the body. She could have died. They did an emergency C-section on her. The baby was born, less than a pound. She was devastated. Another sister and I went to visit her. We asked her about the baby. She told us that the baby was not going to survive. The doctor told her absolutely not. He was bleeding on the brain. He had a few more complications. But one of our sisters, Mary, and myself, convinced her to come down to the neonatal intensive care unit. The three of us, I still remember it, put our hands, 3 hands like this, over this tiny baby, and we prayed for him, for his survival, and I baptized him. At that moment, she named him Jamel. She hadn't given him a name, but she did name him Jamel. She used to, when she came home from the hospital after the baby was born, she went back every day for 4 months to give the baby his nourishment, to hold him, to talk to him, to sing to him. She told me she sang many a song to him. And then she came back to us until the baby was about 4.5 pounds. He came back to Siena House. She left Siena House about 6 months later, got her own apartment, got a wonderful job. She was a very intelligent, very well-educated woman in the sense that she knew her direction. She had finished high school, which is a rarity among our women. However, when the baby was 14 years old, she brought him back to Siena House to join a panel of former residents to talk to our women about the struggle and about hope and about hanging in there. And now, he is 25. So I shared this with a few of the friends here at Voices of Faith. I found a card that she had written to me in 1991, thanking us for teaching her the power of prayer. So if nothing else, that was gratitude. Siena House has provided many programs for our women throughout the years. But the blessing of music came to Siena House in 2013 when I got a call from Carnegie Hall asking if we'd be interested in a project writing lullabies I thought, that sounds like a very unique idea. Let's see. So they came, and we talked. In the meantime, the Department of Homeless Services called me and said, look, you can go ahead with this if you think it's going to be helpful. Well, when the artists arrived, and they did a beautiful demonstration of the lullabies, having each woman write her story and play it back, and they played it back with the music attached. All of a sudden, I realized the gift that had been bestowed upon us. In the midst of the struggle of our women, the Lullaby Project provided them with a time to truly focus on their precious children and not to be concerned about the struggle that was weighing them down. They poured the love in their hearts out in this gift of song to their babies. The women began to realize the gift that had been bestowed on them as well. But my observation was that Carnegie Hall gave them a moment to cherish their children, to recognize the beauty and honor of motherhood, and to create something beautiful for their children that would last forever. And now I would like you to view one of our women who wrote her lullaby for her daughter Ariel. Her name is Chantal.
When I was younger, I just wanted to be a singer. I wanted to be famous. My mom put me to audition for The Lion King, and I was gonna get it, but I was too short to do it. So they told her to update them on the height, and she never did. If she would have, I probably would have been on Broadway right now. But once the audience comes, I'm gonna get very nervous, and then plus it's people that I know that's gonna be here.
I have the immense pleasure to introduce Chanel. Please meet Chanel. Come over here, everybody. Chanel is a lovely young woman, full of strength and creativity as she sings this incredible song that she wrote with Paula and I for her daughter, Ariel. Oh, she's already singing.
Wrap you inside my arms.
Come on, let me hear it.
Want is you. All I really want is you. All I really need is you. Wrap you inside my arms.
All I really want is you.